The Center for Educational Media and the College of Education at Middle Tennessee State University are proud to offer professional development to K-12 educators in Tennessee through our online video library. These videos are aligned with standards set by the Tennessee Department of Education. For more professional development videos, check out our website at www.mtsu.edu/CEM. We are happy today to welcome Miss Emily Gill, who is a school counselor in Rutherford County. She was recognized as School Counselor of the Year in 22 and 23, so we want to congratulate her on that. But she is presenting today, and so I will let her finish her introduction. And looking forward to hear, Ms. Gill, what you have to say today. Thank you for being here.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I believe that we're all really superstars for taking part of our summer to be here, and I really am grateful for being asked to present. I have some speaking and presenting experience, but I'm still under 5. So you guys, hopefully I don't seem too nervous, and I'm really, really happy to be here and share what I've learned after graduate school, especially regarding behavior management. I heard this was a topic of interest from a list that was given to me, and I said, okay, I've received a lot of training in the school system, not necessarily from my time in graduate school, and so I can pass along what I've learned. Just starting off, thank you, Dr. Ebinger. I did not know that the end of the 504 training was going to include discipline, but that was just a perfect transition right into behavior management and discipline. Again, I have 2 handouts, and my presentation really is meant where you can search on your device, your laptop, and look at websites that I'm going to be sharing where you can learn about resources that I'm passing along to you. One of the handouts, just being really transparent, I ran out of all my paper. We all work on very small budgets, and I totally ran out of my paper for this past school year. So the one that talks about ASCA and the school counselor and discipline, you might need to share with a neighbor. All right, so when I was deciding how to design my PowerPoint, I just, it's kind of fun. I thought, okay, cacti for me represent 2 things. The first one is that it's the only type of plant I can keep alive in my office. And the second one is that a prickly cactus reminds me of how students can sometimes be bothersome and disruptive. So I want you to think about what those prickly behaviors are. So let's go ahead and just kind of think to yourself what might be coming to mind. I also want to share that my experience is mostly kindergarten through 8th grade. I currently serve at Thurman Francis Arts Academy here in Rutherford County. Hello to my Rutherford County friends. Also hello to Wilson County people that I may have known from my Wilson County time. But I just want you to know that most of my experience does come from elementary and middle school, but I'm sharing what I can that could be helpful for a high school counselor as well. I love my school counselor supervisors. I do feel privileged to be in a district where we have district school counselor supervisors who have worked as school counselors, and they, Amy Baltimore especially, always reminds us that we have creature comforts, so take care of what you need to. I will not think a thing if you need to stand up and leave and handle something. So, my high school experience that I do have was in Anderson, South Carolina at T.L. Hanna High School. Have you ever seen the movie Radio? It's like 20 years old now, which I can't believe. Okay, I see a few hands. Okay, it's a fantastic movie. So what's cool about T.L. Hanna High School is that is the high school where the character Radio, which in the movie was played by Cuba Gooding Jr., he actually, the man that story is inspired by, I got to meet him during my time at TL Hanna High School. And he really reminds me of someone who found belonging. He had special needs. He was considered a forever junior at this high school so that he would be allowed to come in, still volunteer with the football team. I don't know, he just would volunteer all over the school, but he had his place of belonging. So I want to encourage you to think about the students who maybe are presenting those prickly behaviors, how they are needing belonging as well. So of course in the movie Radio, he had an intellectual disability, but you know, the football team embraced him. They didn't bully him, they embraced him, and he found community. Everyone needs that. We all need that. Okay, so here are the notes. Let's take just a minute and turn and talk to someone around you about the behaviors you think of as being prickly, and maybe students that you're thinking of. You can also talk about like where they might find their belonging in your school building. All right, so what behaviors do you think of when you think of prickly, annoying, disturbing behaviors? What do you think of? You can call out and I'll repeat it for the camera. What do you think of?
Blurting.
Blurting out for sure, yes.
Interrupting.
Yes, interrupting.
Getting other children off task all the time.
Yes, getting other kids off task. Oh man, it's always one of them. Any avoidant behaviors you can think of? Laying heads down. That's one that comes to mind. Going to the restroom and trying to stay in there. Yeah. Okay, so I know whenever I've been at Scally or other conferences and they're like, you might be thinking of a student, I'm always able to come up with a student or two. And I do also find that those are the students whose names I won't forget. But I also do find a place in my heart where I really sincerely care for that kid. I wouldn't say that it's hard for me to do that. I think that's what comes first and foremost, and us as counselors, we think of what that kid is needing, what is likable, what the strengths are, but can they still get on our nerves? Yeah. Can they still make us feel completely disrespected? Yes. All right, so let me keep going. So here are the ones I think of. For attention seeking, I think of rumor, gossip spreaders. Again, a lot of these you might notice like, oh yeah, that's a middle school counselor talking. Avoidant behaviors, laying head down. When I'm using technology, if they go off of the wrong website, and you have to be like going around and monitoring everybody's screen, and what are you doing here? And they're like, and you're like, I know what you're doing, so please start doing what I'm asking you to, thank you. Aggressive behaviors tend to be what I think we think of first. Like in elementary school, with our little 5- and 6-year-olds, we can see aggressive behaviors. So here I have more of like the middle school ones, but of course with physical, you know, when we're talking about throwing objects like a chair, I mean, they can find the super strength to knock over bookshelves, lay on the ground, push their legs up against something and it falls over, rip things off of a teacher's wall. I mean, I've seen some very aggressive behaviors from elementary students. Now with middle school, and I think also with high school, because I would say that my 8th graders definitely think that they're in high school sometimes. They can argue easily, name call, using slurs and acting like they don't know that it's a slur, and just basically your bully behaviors. And then of course this can lead into really serious behaviors like threats. So I'm going to try to not take up too much time, but in preparing for today, I was like, it is really important for me to teach you some of the things that I learned the hard way. And some of what I learned the hard way is what I am not. What is somebody else's role? Also, I want to share times where I wanted to help, but I was really teeter-tottering between that admin and counselor role. And so I want to share with you what ASCA says is the guideline for us. So we're not trained behavior interventionists, and not every school building has a behavior interventionist. I've been in a school building that does, and I was very grateful for them because it helped the counselor focus more on tier 1. Have we all heard of like RTI 2B, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3? Okay. So it helped to focus on tier 1 being for all students, where the behavior interventionist focused on the students who had a bit more severe behaviors. We are not the school psychologist or the special education teacher trained in behavior modification. I know I didn't come out of graduate school trained in restraints, and early on in my days in Wilson County, I was asked, like, do you want to be trained in restraining? And I was like, I don't know, do I? Do I want to be trained in that? And long story short, I said no. I said, no, that's someone else. And that was my special education teacher and my assistant principal. So I do believe it's very important that we follow ethical practices and consult or collaborate with behavior specialists. Some students have behaviors that are outside of our area of training, and we're doing the right thing when we say, that is not where my training is. I'm going to go to my colleague. That's the right thing to do. Okay, so what does ASCA say about networks of support for students? And we see if the QR code works for you. Fingers crossed. Yay, I heard a yes. Okay. So this comes out of this document. So ASCA says about networks of support for students that we involve diverse networks of support, including educational teams, community partners, wraparound services, and vocational rehabilitation services to best serve students. Wraparound services, I've heard that phrase before. I don't know that I always knew exactly what we were talking about, but I would gather from it, okay, we're talking about basically a team of people working together to serve the student and what they need. So ASCA says we need to look to our teams, our educational teams, and involve diverse networks of support. So I believe we've probably all been trained on this, but I think it's important to include it because I will tell you, I think it was I just finished my 8th year as a school counselor, and I believe it was probably year 4 or 5 for me. I met a 4th grade girl who knew how to push my buttons. And I'll tell you what got me one day. And I was like, whoo, I'm gonna have to let my co-counselor help this one. She said to me, I don't want your help. Gosh, that is like the worst thing for me to hear. Like, I am made to be a helper. And she said, I can still see her. Like, she had, was trying to run out of the school. I'd managed to keep her in the school. She was up against the wall, which, bless, she was probably felt cornered, like up against the wall. I was probably trying to stand next to her like this or so, maybe like this. But I remember her turning and looking at me, and it was as if she knew my Achilles heel. I don't want your help. What do I do with that? I go, okay. I don't even remember now how I responded to her. I probably said, and I remember her name, I'll change it for the recording. Ashley, I hear you, Ashley. I hear you. You're feeling really mad. I probably said something like that. But really at the time, I remember more of how I was feeling. And from then on, I was like, yep, Miss McClary, my co-counselor, she's yours. I'm here for you if you need my help, if you're out one day. But she's yours. You can reach her in a way that, I'm not able to. So, getting back to what I have up here, with our own ethical considerations, we need to know our biases. We need to know our triggers. We need to know, for me, what that Achilles heel is. We need to know how to practice emotional and physical boundaries with students. I have no problem being really transparent. I believe in counseling and therapy for us, is so necessary. And even before, this is my 2nd career, so even before I found my way to school counseling, which I believe was always meant to be my path, I received boundary counseling because it was necessary from trauma I had experienced as a kid, as a student when I was growing up. So when I'm going to help other kids, do I need to recognize when something is outside of my scope? Yeah, and set those emotional and physical boundaries? Yes. And it can be so hard, so hard. So have your person to call. I love my counselor friends, love them. The only reason why I got Tennessee School Counselor of the Year is because a fellow counselor nominated me. I did not know who nominated me for the longest time. I would find people and go, did you nominate me? They'd be like, no, Emily, I would, but it wasn't me. I didn't know for the longest time. But you've got to have your people. So when it's hard, when you have that tough day, you call them. When it's something more than your really talented counselor friend can help you with, you go to your own counselor and therapist. Of course, self-care can mean lots of other things besides counseling and therapy for yourself, but we all know what those are. So please remember that it is a best practice for you to do those for yourself so that you represent us well. Like, just being real, like, represent us well, represent school counselors well, and do that by managing yourself and not getting burned out and taking it out on people who don't deserve it. I'm gonna move on. All right, ask it and behavior continued. We don't diagnose. We don't impose personal biases. We don't share beliefs or values rooted in our own religion. We respect our students and our families' culture and ethnicity. We do, I think I made a spot for this on the notes if you want to fill that in. We do respect students and families' values, beliefs, and cultural background, and involve parents and guardians when it does not breach confidentiality. I'll speak more on that. I'm going to catch my breath for a minute. Do y'all have any questions before I move on? I designed, like when I was planning this, I designed my questions throughout, and it's really fine that I had to pivot, but if I notice that maybe I'm losing my breath, I'm going to take a moment and let y'all ask me some questions, but I will keep going. Okay, so this is the handout that I ran out of paper at school to do. Did everybody get one or can look off one with their neighbor? School Counselor and Discipline, American School Counselor Association, the guideline. Looks like this. So as I read over the position and the rationale, our roles, a big focus I have these days is on a safe and supportive school. I've always cared about that. I've always, I remember having really great training in graduate school about the need for belonging, the need for a safe learning environment for all. Just, as we have things in our culture and society that can be of real concern, I've really made a focus on what does it really look like to prevent danger and have a safe and supportive school environment. So read through those a moment. Okay, I'm only going to read this section that I took out of it. School counselors have specialized training and skills in promoting appropriate student behavior and preventing disruptive student behavior. School counselors are not disciplinarians, but should be a resource for school personnel in developing individual and school-wide discipline procedures. So a resource. I have the camera up on the slide because I wanted to remember to say this. At the beginning of the school year, I think most counselors do a meet the school counselor, here's what I do, here's when you ask for me, here's how to ask for me, this is what it means for me to have to break confidentiality, that type of thing. But I never tell them that they're going to be in trouble with me. Never, never, ever. But so many of the students, if they have not asked to meet with me, if they didn't ask to meet with me, and I go to pull them, what do you think their question is for me? What did I do? Am I in trouble? Exactly, exactly. So of course I know we have to have the cameras in the school. They are very helpful. But I always say to them, remember, I am a helping adult. I love Mr. Rogers. Look for the helping adults in the world. I am a helping adult. I'm doing what I can to help you stay out of trouble. It is really up to you. All right, we're so familiar with the list of appropriate and inappropriate school counselor roles. The two that I really wanted to focus on have to do with discipline, and I promise I'm going to get to classroom management and individual interventions. So just read those to yourself. I'll tell you guys, and this is something that I'm mentally like debating with myself. So for at home, the appropriate is to counsel the student who has a discipline problem and consult with teachers, principals to resolve the problem. And then inappropriate is to assign the discipline consequences or assist with duties in the principal's office. So the assist with duties in the principal's office, I immediately had a flashback to my Wilson County days, where an amazing administrator said to me, I'll be bad cop, you be good cop. I'll be bad cop, you be good cop. And it was an approach that we took a lot with kids who had done something, and we were pretty certain that they had broken a rule, usually a serious rule. And I think back to that and go, oh man, I don't know. I don't know that I should have gone along with that. I want to hear from you. What do you think? Do you think I should have gone along with being in the assistant principal's office and playing good cop? No. I see a lot of shaking heads. No. Yeah, I agree. It's one of those fine lines, because then I also think of in more recent years in Rutherford County where there have been times where a student who maybe did do something wrong needed support, and I was asked to be in a meeting with the parents to help advocate for the student, to help say where I thought the need was. And I think I feel all right with that in meeting with the parents. I see nodding heads. But that's one where I think that I've learned over the years how to navigate it. Okay, so I'm going to switch gears a little bit. Do we want to say anything about discipline and students? Any questions here? You guys helped me solve my own problem of deciding if I should ever be good cop again. I don't think, no. Okay, so chronic absences, and I was Rutherford County's summer summit's going on right now, so this morning I was there, and don't you know, like this came up, 504s, what is our role? So I do believe that we have a role, and I've talking with other middle school counselors, we have a role in deciding what the need is. So if the behavior problem is due to being behind in school, not wanting to come to school, I've really learned to ask, would you allow me to help with fill in the blank? So this is a time where you're going to be working with the parents, working with the kid. The kid's gonna know that you're talking to their parents. So I'll get to that in a minute. So here are some things that you might want to consider when you're helping a student who has chronic tardiness or absences. Identify obstacles or barriers for the student and family. We are, and I just have to throw this in here because I love what I've been learning about restorative practices. This is the Restorative Practices Handbook, but this handbook suggests that, really it recommends that a parent and a student create the plan on how to remedy the attendance problem and say, here's what we're gonna try and here's what we're gonna do. I haven't done this yet, but I think it's brilliant. And it's a goal I have to, when we do have a student with chronic absences and we're having that meeting, to give the parent and the student time to talk through what might need to happen. Okay, so this is a situation where because you are a part of the team, because you're in that meeting, you know, you have an admin there likely, maybe a truancy officer, you are going to need to explain confidentiality and the importance of it for your counseling relationship to be successful with their student. Yes, I'm happy to check in with your kid if they're late to school and they really didn't want to come to school and it was really hard for you to get them to school and they're crying and it was so hard for you to leave them, or they were threatening to run away, or, you know, whatever the age is. You say, sure, I will definitely check in with your kid, but you explain confidentiality and how you are there for their kid and you're going to help their kid through what they're experiencing. And, you know, I'll shoot you an email saying they're in class and they're good. Maybe at most you do that, right? You don't call them and give them a briefing of the counseling session and what happened. And that has to be explained. And then, of course, we all know that helps with your counseling relationship. The student's like, oh, okay, you really are here for me. Okay. So I say this may be a situation where there is not an exception to confidentiality, but the student gives permission for you to share something with their parent. This is a practice that I've learned to use when I'm training students on what it means to have an exception to confidentiality with self-harm. We know all of them. I also tell them, I'm like, just to be really upfront with you, there might be times where for this problem to get better, I might ask you if I can share a piece of information with your teacher or your parent. You can tell me no. Like, you really can tell me no. But this problem might just continue to persist, and I will put it exactly in your words. Like, you can tell me exactly what you want me to pass along. So sometimes this is a situation where the student gets to feel like they're empowered, that I am helping them to have a voice in what is going on for them. All right, again, so are we the disciplinarian? It's too quiet. Are we the disciplinarian? No. So if a student who hasn't asked to come to your office, if they want to leave your office, do you let them? Yes. Yes, I can still remember I got to go to Clemson University. I loved it so much. I'd been in Murfreesboro, and then my family moved to South Carolina. And I took a class with, when I wanted to go back to get my degree in school counseling, I took one class here, like development through the lifespan. Is that right? Yeah, I took that one here, and I loved it. And I got to take it online, and we were moving to South Carolina, and I was doing the work online. And then, of course, I couldn't continue that way, and so fortunately, I got into Clemson. Well, I remember a really excellent professor at Clemson saying that it's not like, and I'm probably going to mess up the term here a little bit, we're not court-mandated counseling. We are not like if you have gone in front of a judge and the judge says to be out on probation, parole, you have to do this counseling. Okay, that's definitely not us. So if a kid wants to leave our office, most definitely. I mean, you make sure they get back to class for certain, but you let them leave, yes. So, and this is getting into the individual counseling with a kid who has a discipline problem. So when you ask to meet with them, will it help if you have already spoken with them before? Yes. And will it help if you know some information about them, if they have a little brother or a little sister? I find that that's a really good one to know. Like, oh, I saw that little baby brother or sister in the car rider line, or maybe you just somehow know that they help out at home, that they're the oldest sibling. Oh, and it'll drop their shell. They'll be like, oh yeah, I love my little brother. and I do this and I do that with them. So extracurricular activities, all that type of thing, of course it'll help. I have learned to ask if I'm pronouncing their name correctly. That is a basic step to show positive regard. And you know what I have found, because I wish I was one of these people that just remembered names so easily. I have to work extra hard. I've got a disability when it comes to remembering names. But I'll find like little things like this kid named Ryder. My principal said, "What's that kid's name?" And I was like, "Oh no, I don't know his name." And then I was like, you know what, he looks like Flynn Rider from that movie, Tangled, I think it is. I was like, yep, and from then on, I would say, "Good morning, Rider," and I would remember his name. So find little tricks for yourself, but also, when you have like a bazillion Aidens and, and I don't know, you just are like, oh no, which Aiden are you? Remembering something that they're involved with or something to just connect with them, I find to be just one of the best first steps in breaking down that wall when they haven't asked to come to your office, but you're really trying to help make a difference in their life. Also, when I'm in the classroom and a kid goes, "Miss Gill, that's not my name," I go, "Oh no," and I say, "Okay, tell me again." And do you know what? When a kid corrects me on their name, I don't forget it ever again. And I tell them that. I'm like, "You tell me if I mess it up, because then I won't mess it up anymore." And that tends to be true for me. Okay, here are individual counseling interventions that have worked for me, and I think can work for you too. So read this list to yourself, and then let's take another 30 seconds to talk to our neighbors about the ones that we like the most from this list. And I didn't say, these are for students who don't want to talk. When you have this student who doesn't want, who like maybe you like got them to smirk a little bit when you brought up something that they like, but they still don't really want to talk. These are things that I have found.
It can take a little bit longer.
Yeah. Or puppets, or just playing a game sometimes, but not really talking, just, you know.
All right, I'm so glad y'all are talking to one another. Before I forget to share this, some of the training I received at some point, it kind of sometimes blurs together for me now, but I remember at some point being told, you know, if you don't allow students to talk to one another and you're expecting for them to sit there silently for 45, 50 minutes, they're gonna find, and they just have that need to say something, they're gonna find opportunity to blurt out, to distract another student, to interrupt your lesson. So I'm a big fan of the turn and talk, you know, with your friend and with your neighbor. And I definitely am a fan of circulating the classroom to make sure that they're on topic. And then there's likely another activity where they share something about what they talked about. So that's a common, easy one that I use that I found keeps kids engaged, keeps them at least seeming like they're interested in the lesson, which I know a lot of them are. I'm fortunate to work in an amazing school where kids will actually be like, "Thank you, Mrs. Gill, for that lesson." And I'm like, "Oh wow, you really are an overachiever." Because they are. Thurman Francis Arts Academy is a magnet school for gifted and high achieving students. But let me tell you right now, we are a very diverse population in Smyrna, Tennessee, and we have special needs, tons of 504s, and just because you're intellectually gifted or high achieving really just means that you're sneakier with your behaviors is what I've decided. So don't think I have it easy. Okay, let me tell you one little story before I move on from this. One of the journal between student and counselor, I really think that I learned this one out of necessity because I was split between two schools, and this kid was a frequent flyer, and I couldn't be there every time that she wanted to talk. And she had some real stuff going on, you know. A score was pretty high, like she needed support. And so I was like, okay, this is what we're going to do. You're going to write me what's going on in this journal that's just between me and you. And when I'm back at the school and I'm not at my other school, I will read what you wrote to me. I will respond to what you wrote to me. And when we're able to both meet up and talk about it, we will. But we can pass this back and forth. I really, really think I just came up with that out of necessity. And this student, she still is heavy on my heart because she's now in middle school. It was at the time I was split between an elementary school and a K-8 school. So she has left elementary school. She's in middle school now. And she emails me now, which I personally am fine with. I don't know if y'all have seen us to email you. I'm personally fine with it. I practice boundaries and putting first things first, but I'll eventually respond to them. And you guys, like this past year, she had a rough year. And there was one day where she was like, I'm going to get in a fight today. I'm going to fight them today. And I was just practically begging her through that email, like, don't do it. Go to your counselor. May I please call your counselor? Please don't do this, you know. And she didn't. I mean, I think she still finds some trouble, but she didn't get into the fight, thank goodness. And I did. She was like, I forget how she responded, but she was like, yes. I think she was like, I already talked to my counselor. I already do that, Miss Gill. Like, I'm already talking to her. And I called her and I was like, she really is having, I'll say that her name's Katrina. I was like, Katrina, I was like, I know you're helping Katrina, but like, she's really having a bad day. Like, can you just kind of check on her and see if something's really going to happen after school? And I remember the counselor was super kind to me and said, sure, Miss Gill, sure. All right, so now let's get into, so Aska said that the appropriate roles were to counsel the student and to consult with teachers, other people in the building. So I've learned, this all came from training after graduate school, I've learned to ask, what's the primary behavior? And you're likely going to recognize a lot of this from RTI 2B. In my stuff, I forgot to put the 2. You're likely going to recognize a lot of it from that type of training. Who has been through maybe some RTI B training? Okay, so I'm going to keep it, I'm just going to kind of skim. But this is what, if you're in a school where you're really looked to intervene on behaviors, then this is information that can be helpful to you. So basically, I lead with, what's the primary behavior? I love using a school counselor referral. That can be the teacher, the student, the parent, and they're going to tell me what the primary concern is. And then you're not going to take on too much. And if you're really, really like collecting data, this is going to go to a meeting with the parent. You're going to need to show what the primary behavior is, what you're doing to help the student. Then you're going to collect some type of data. And then you're going to have a goal, not like an IEP goal, but you're going to have, because this is a general education student usually, because if it's a special education student, then they need to be receiving this as part of their special education services with that teacher. But you are still going to set, when I say a goal, I mean, okay, so 25% of the day, they are doing some type of disruptive behavior. We want to see that go down to 20% of the day or 15% of the day. So you want to be able to measure how your intervention is helping that primary behavior. Let me say a little bit more about the different types of behaviors. So when the student does blank, what do they seem to get out of it, or what do they avoid? So when the student goes to the restroom for half of the class, what are they avoiding? What are they getting out of that behavior? So you're going to You're not going to diagnose, but you're going to collect this data to pass it along to the behavior interventionist or whoever that person in the team is that is going to go in and do an observation. They're going to say, what am I looking for? And this is going to be your possible function of the behavior. The disruptive behavior has worked for the student before. What did the student get out of it? And I will say, I tell really anybody, some of the most challenging behaviors I have helped with and at times said this is too much for the counselor role are kindergarten behaviors. Just why do you think? Why do you think it might be kindergartners? What was that? They can't sit still. They're not used to it. And why are they not used to it? They haven't been there. And, you know, we ask, well, did they go to pre-K? How did they do in pre-K? Did they go to daycare? Were they at home, right? Is this a child who's being raised by like a really young single parent and they're learning what to do and they're needing resources? So I like this approach. What have they gotten out of this behavior before? When did it work for them? What are they needing to learn? What is the skill they are needing to be taught? There's a lot more you can learn about this through RTIB, and I'm going to reference some websites. Okay, you definitely want to find out what the teacher has tried. So veteran teachers are likely, and this is coming from real life, likely to think that what has worked for them before should still be working, and it's somebody else's problem, and maybe they don't want to try something new, and that's hard. That's hard to come up against. So I would say from my experience, fortunately I haven't experienced this too much because if they're asking for help, they're like willing to try something new, but they're still gonna be like, oh, just over it, They're still just gonna be like, man, I can't believe how this is going. And it might be that the administrators have said, well, have you talked to the school counselor? And they're like, no. And then they come and talk to you and you go, okay, let's see what we can try. And they're like, So you're gonna definitely give them credit. And I would say, I've learned to say, how would you like me to help? In the same way, it's very similar. And when I'm meeting with the parents, when there's an attendance problem or a food problem or a clothing problem or a hygiene problem, what would you accept my help with? How would you allow me to help with fill in the blank? Same thing with teachers. I see everything you have done here. What do you think you would like my help with? How could you use my help? And sometimes it is giving that teacher a break from the kid and they come to your small group counseling and maybe they get a little break. Maybe that's it. But you're gonna try to find some other things as well. You might have to remind the teacher, because I have found with veteran teachers that as we're advocating for our role, we're also sharing what we're not. What we're not meant to be. So we're not meant to be a disciplinarian. And you definitely want to ask what has been shared with the parent or guardian. Has anybody ever been in the terrible position to call home and they've never heard from a teacher that there was a problem? Oh my goodness. I think I only let that happen one time, because that is the worst position to be in ever. So I've learned, again, the hard way, that you ask them what has been communicated to the parent guardian, and also say, okay, you've tried all these things, let's try this new thing. And when they say, this is how I'm open to your help, find a way to share what you can do that fits within that request. And you might need to say, well, when this or this happens, and you use your classroom management and you communicate home and it's not getting any better, then maybe it is time for the office referral. You know, maybe it's not a time when you email me and ask me to come pull the kid. Okay, so this is the part where I really want to share free resources, woohoo, free, because I know, like, this is me. About $200 I get from the district, and I'm fortunate to be at a great school where I get $300 from a fundraiser. So I know we need as much free as we possibly can. I have a lot of these listed on the notes, but I think there are some that are not listed because I added them to my presentation later. Okay, who uses Canva? Oh man, it's so good. Y'all are so lucky if you're earlier on in your career as a school counselor, Canva is something I wish I'd had early on. So, for example, the notes page, I created that in Canva. It took me not even 5 minutes because there are templates that you can use. In the classroom, because I am very fortunate that I have administration that wants me to provide classroom lessons. By the way, I call them counselor class because when people say, well, you still call it guidance, I'm like, we can get rid of that. We can get rid of calling my class lessons guidance. I can't do anything about those letters on the wall. I would love to get a tool and plant them off. That I can't. But we can change me being called, guidance counselor and the lessons I teach being called guidance. It's counselor class. So, doodle notes. Doodle notes have been one of my go-tos. At definitely upper elementary, probably even, I don't know, you decide with your kids. I'm okay with the worksheets. I agree that we need to use games and activities for the young ones and teaching skills. But when you're presenting information to older kids, and also to adults, a lot of them will say that their learning style is to listen and to write and to doodle. So I'm just a big fan of the doodle notes. And you can create those very easily in Canva, or there's other ways you can do it as well. So when you go into Canva, if you search behavior, coping, doodle notes, social emotional, and bucket filler, does anybody at the elementary level teach the bucket filler lesson? Yeah, it's a good one. I haven't taught that one in a while, and I love it. I'll still reference it sometimes with my 4th and 5th graders. They have resources there for you, already created. You just print them off. Again, if you want to jot down these websites, I'm going to go through with the time we have remaining and share what I have found on these sites to be really helpful.
On our website, it will be posted on the website, so they can reference it then.
Awesome. Thank you for that reminder. Yes. Yeah, whatever works for you. Okay, so I know in graduate school, I just tend to think back when I'm presenting to adults. I think back to what I liked in the classroom in graduate school. And I remember another really great professor. She was basically had us do a scavenger hunt of the ASCA website to find the different resources that were there. So that's basically what I'm thinking of here. I want you to get on your devices and laptops and look at these sites. Okay, what is this one? pbis.org, pbisworld.com. If you want to read this to yourself, you can. I really received so much training through the state and Vanderbilt. I feel very fortunate. One of the challenges from being trained in one state and then having my first job in a new state, and if anybody from Wilson County is watching this, I know I was a baby counselor. I was such a baby counselor in Wilson County, but I had not even heard of RTI, academic or behavior. And so once I started receiving the training from Vanderbilt, I was so grateful. As a reminder, your administrator is the lead for whatever multi-tiered system of support your school implements. Of course, we know this, but that is so important because if your teachers are being asked to do something, you don't want to be the bad guy, right? You don't want to be, it needs to come from higher up saying this is what we're trying, this is what we're doing. PBIS.org, I find that one's a really important site. So if you're already going through a lot of training, I wouldn't spend too much time on this one. But what this one does have is a tools list, including bully prevention information and school climate survey assessment. So the school climate survey assessment, check with your school because likely your admin already have results from a school climate survey and you don't need to ask people to do that again. You can ask to see if that's already done and then you can look to see where your admin would love for you to help make a difference in the climate of your school, which we would hope would benefit classrooms and kids. Okay, so many free resources on this one, pbisworld.com. I definitely wish I knew about this site when I was a first-year school counselor. Forced choice survey, so that's going to help you find what motivates the student. And so whether that is tangibles or adult attention or peer attention, right? I'm forgetting one. Which one am I forgetting? That has the forced choice survey. Teaching on de-escalation, that is really important. You do not want to get in a power struggle. A kid that I really, really love with ADHD in the 5th grade, I can just see his face right now, and I really do love him. He's wonderful. But he was, you have to keep gifted and high achieving students engaged and busy, and he maybe was like getting a little bored, maybe. And I remember he was out of his seat, he was kind of making a big scene, and I was staring at him, and he was staring at me, and then I go, I'm gonna change his name. I go, George, what's going on here? Like, I managed to like make it into a joke. Like, what is happening right now? And he was like, I don't know. And I was like, okay. So, and then I found a way to, this has been a few years ago, but I just remember finding a way to not let him trying to get attention make me feel disrespected, but instead call it out in a funny way with him where I wasn't calling him out like he was in trouble with his peers, because that'll turn a kid against you real quick, and especially as they get older. But really, probably, I can think of some first graders who didn't like that. And then found a way just to kind of make light and be like, dude, what you doing? This is what I want you to be doing right now. And you know what, looking back on that, he probably was off task, because later on when I had to do an observation for his 504 plan, this kid was just all over, totally off task. So he's just one that would get off task. But knowing how to de-escalate a situation is your prevention to avoid a power struggle. Don't take it personally. Don't take their behavior personally. That can be really hard, really, really hard. Let's see. On this pbisworld.com site, it also has a breakdown of tiers 1, 2, and 3. I'll tell you right now, like tier 3 stuff, go to your behavior interventionist. Like if you think that you're looking at like tier 2 doesn't seem to be working with a student, that's going to another person in your building. The main page has behaviors to click on. For example, lying, cheating. Again, so many of these you're going to avoid a power struggle. Okay, now let's look at CW Fit. Canva, I've really already talked about. I want to share a little bit about Love and Logic. So CW Fit, anybody heard of them before? Okay, good. So CW Fit is a way to manage a classroom using a game. It's called a behavior game. And I did bring like a little booklet that I can share if you want to look at it. But I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. It is a tier 2 intervention for teachers in elementary and middle school. Everything is free. Everything is free with it. You go through their steps, of course. you would request access. I never paid for any of their materials. What I will tell you is that I used it informally. A teacher who wants to use this is going to use it a bit more formally in the classroom. Just like any other Tier 2 interventions, they're going to say you need to deliver it with fidelity for it to work. So for me, the one, ignoring inappropriate behavior, I like this one a lot because you don't want to let one student derail your class lesson. So you are going to basically say, this is a behavior I'm looking for during my class lesson today. I'm organizing you when I think, classrooms are usually like rows, right? Like this. Like if I was standing here, it's usually like this a lot of times. Or they're in their groupings. And so I'll be like, you're team 1, team 2, so on. And I'll put the team up on the board, no names, they know what team they're in. And then I'll say, okay, in 15 minutes, I'll see how we're doing meeting this behavior expectation. And when that timer goes off from myself to remind me, then I'll give them a tally mark, like, oh, great, like you're doing what I asked of you. And really, for me, with my once a month lesson in their classroom, what it's gonna mean, if they get up to 3 or 4 points for each team, then they're gonna get a compliment. Then I'm gonna tell their teacher, they did so fantastic. Like if you use dojo points or if you use house points or whatever reward system the teacher uses, then I'll say, they did so great for me today, they deserve to get that reward, or a positive, message home that they did great. And kids look at it like a game. So to do it formally, there is a point sheet. And then these are free rewards. Let's say the teacher uses this all week long, and if the class gets up to a certain number of points, then they receive the reward. So on Friday, some of the ones I thought were creative for elementary, tiptoe tag, guest reader, marker board time. If you want a big reward, like a special art activity, something like that. You really do find that older kids who get in trouble, they want their parents to know when they've been good and when they've done something well. Thinking back to my example from the beginning, the one that was like upset with me and told me she didn't want my help, she became a reader for a younger class, and I remember taking pictures and sending them home to her grandma and her single mom, because she went between both houses, and letting them know that she had had a good day and make a big deal about it. So again, those are some free ones. Love and Logic I learned about from a professor at Clemson. It is a good tool for a resource for parents. Love and Logic is a good one for parents. It looks like this, but it also is good for teachers. They have free articles. They do have books, but they're inexpensive. And talking about avoiding power struggles, this will help you to use statements saying what you want to see or what you're expecting. So we are pretty much at the end of our time. Any questions before we wrap up and say bye? Well, thank you again for asking me to present. It means a lot to me. I did my undergrad at MTSU, and 20 years ago I had one of my first classes in this building, so it's like a serious throwback for me. So I just thank you so much, and thank you guys for your participation. It means a lot to me, and I hope that you got something out of this today that you can take back to your school. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you, Ms. Gill. It's clear to me you have been with real kids in real schools in real situations from all of your ideas. So thank you for being with us today.